Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. I hope you're all having a very nice day indeed. Today I thought I'd review Series 10 as a whole because over the past 12 weeks I've done each individual episode as they've aired. But I wanted, as well as that, to have on the channel a statement of what I thought of the series overall. An overall overview, I suppose, of my thoughts and feelings about Series 10, about the story arc and themes, and just grand scheme of things. The kind of things you have had to see in the whole series to be able to say and to be able to think about and talk about. So without further ado, let's start with the TARDIS team of Series 10. The Doctor, Bill and Nardole. Now, it's been said on my channel in my videos enough alone that there really is something special about this team, something that completely works. The majority of the fandom was very pleased to see the 12th Doctor acquire his own companion, a fresh companion for him and one that's unique to him and exclusive to him in the form of Bill Potts, because I think some fans were a bit tired of Clara after 2 series with him and wanted to see something fresh and exciting, and Bill Potts certainly did not disappoint on that front. I think Stephen Moffat clearly strove to make his final companion very unique, resulting in a bubbly, enthusiastic, inquisitive type that we've not really seen in a very long while. Actress Pearl Mackie successfully portrayed a range of challenging emotions and just generally challenging material throughout the series, very varied, especially in the finale. And disregarding any debates about representation or political correctness on TV, in media, I don't think you can deny that Bill's skin colour and sexuality were essentially grounding her as a convincing 21st century, or even going further than that, a very 2017 character, very modern, very relevant to this day. And I think actually that these attributes, and many others as well, but particularly these ones, contributed to Bill becoming one of the most widely loved and relatable Doctor Who companions in the show's history. Although Bill isn't personally my favourite companion ever, I can't really fault Mackie's performance, and I'm sure she'll go down as one of the most successful Who companions in years to come. Along with Bill, the 12th Doctor was also joined by Nardole this series, reappearing again after 2 brief kind of cameo appearances in Christmas specials, developing into a more kind of companion role into this series. And as I've said many times in my individual reviews, I've loved the inclusion of Nardole. I think he's a great character. The concept of a third wheel in that Doctor-companion relationship, that dynamic that we've become so used to, I think, throughout the show's history. He really just provides something very unique. Those light moments of comic relief, or that ability, I think, to step up when the Doctor isn't around, to become a more Doctor-like figure. And that is something that I think Doctor Who has been missing, or if not missing, just has never had before. It's something very fresh, very, very new to have a kind of comic relief character. Something like a Shakespearean fool, a jester, just there in the background in the TARDIS, providing that comic relief. And I just think it's been an absolute joy to see Matt Lucas back in the series, clearly really enjoying himself. And through Nardole, that character, having that opportunity to provide something really, really brand new and fresh to Doctor Who, and that's just been great to see. He's been a real asset to Doctor Who overall, a big part of Series 10's success, and I honestly don't think the show will be quite the same without him. And then, of course, Peter Capaldi himself, who gave some absolutely phenomenal performances throughout this series. It really was his best performance as the Doctor, I think, overall. Because it is his 3rd series, he's had the chance to develop his performance and character, and I think by this point, from a fan perspective, it's just really nice to be able to enjoy a brand new series of him in that niche, and he's really been able to find his feet, I think, by this point, so that he can be that quintessential embodiment of the Doctor. For me, Capaldi really does embody that role. He encapsulates it, he inhabits it in a way that arguably no other actor has quite achieved to the same extent that he has. For me, it was a highlight to see the Doctor exploring the universe anew through Bill's eyes, and becoming a lecturer, grounded on Earth, very much like Hartnell in the very first Doctor Who story. Along the way, he's also become blind, and then finally had his final, last stand in the finale. In particular, I think, his speech to the 2 Masters in The Doctor Falls was a real defining moment for this Doctor. It really summed up his whole approach, his whole attitude, his core values, and I think that was possibly my favourite moment of the whole series, maybe even of the Capaldi era overall. Series 8 began with the Doctor really questioning whether he's a good man. I think it's safe to say that by this point, he's absolutely proved himself as a good man, and also as worthy of that title, the Doctor, capable of being the Doctor and having those core values. Now, I'll be getting much more nostalgic about the 12th Doctor and about him leaving in the run-up to his swan song, but I will say this now. that I've just loved seeing this incarnation develop over the last 3 series, and Series 10 really has proved to be a proper culmination of everything that makes Peter Capaldi the perfect Doctor for me, the quintessential incarnation of that character. Now onto the story arc. Series 10's arc has been quite different from what we've seen before, I think, in more than one regard. I think it's fair to say that some would say, perhaps most, that the payoff to the first big question of the series, who is in the vault, was somewhat disappointing, and there's definitely an element of this, but I would also argue that from a broader perspective, the overall Series 10 arc is a much more intricate affair, very much like what we saw last year in Patrick Ness's first series of Class. In Series 10, for example, stories were connected by a variety of plot strands. For example, there's Bill's mother, who debuted in the pilot through the pictures, the photographs, and eventually played a vital role in the resolution to the lie of the land, but also appeared through photographs and memories in Knock Knock and Oxygen along the way. There's the whole Vault subplot, beginning with the arrival of the Doctor and Nardole at St. Luke's University in the pilot, and running through practically every single episode. Missy turning good, which kind of feeds into the Vault, it's the progression, the development of the whole Vault thing in the second half of Series 10, and the presence of Heather, the water creature, bookending the series with appearances in the pilot and the Doctor Falls, and also arguably bookending Bill's character arc, and starting and finishing that off very nicely. On this level, I personally think that the story arc in Series 10 is one of the better ones. It's more superior, I think, to the repeated meme format of a single phrase such as Bad Wolf or Torchwood that we saw in Series 1 and 2, but perhaps more akin to Series 3, 4 or 9, arcs that see a variety of ideas, concepts and characters spanning multiple episodes, eventually tying into one fulfilling finale episode at the end of the series that kind of allows you to look back at the whole series and go, oh yeah, that's clever how these episodes will link together. It doesn't all just build towards a finale, there are interlinking themes and subplots that connect and link other episodes, that crop up to just provide that more kind of fulfilling, convincing sense of one overall story. And finally, I'm going to look back over the individual episodes in Series 10 and briefly just go over my thoughts on them in hindsight, and also provide that all-important episode ranking right at the end. So overall, I think we have had a pretty good combination of simple, introductory style, kind of rainy day episodes almost, in the early half of the series, although I was beginning to get slightly bored of them by week 4 or 5. The superb Oxygen was really the first story to deviate or stray from this kind of mission statement, I suppose, of an introductory, simple, stripped-back style of Doctor Who in that kind of format. And of course, following this was the mini-arc of the Doctor going blind, and the Monk trilogy. Despite liking the first 2 installments fairly well as individual episodes, ultimately, I think I do agree with other fans that actually the whole concept of a 3-episode arc slap bang in the middle of the series was perhaps a mistake, simply because the heavier, interlinked story contrasted so greatly with what had gone before. And also on a separate note, it did kind of jar a bit with the development of Bill and that companion Doctor dynamic, perhaps with the exception of the Lie of the Land, which saw the whole Bill's mum thing. The less said of that, the better, in my opinion. But I think really those middle episodes could have been used slightly better, just to continue to develop that dynamic and to develop Bill as a character, but instead I think it just stunted that a little bit. And obviously the intention wasn't to do that as far as I'm aware. But yeah, it's a bit of a shame, a missed opportunity I think, to really develop Bill as a character and that Doctor Companion dynamic. Following this, we had a couple more fairly basic, filler-style stories almost, which again was a bit of a shame, because to me it felt like we'd gone back to square one. We'd gone back to that introductory style, rainy day format that we'd seen in the first half of the series, and particularly after the heavier Monk trilogy, which was very much more arc-based. I think again that jarred, because each section of Series 10 was quite different. You had those simple stories of the first 5, then the Monk trilogy, then a couple more simple ones, and then the very more arc-driven finale. And I suppose really, if I was to criticise that, I would say that perhaps there could have been a bit more consistency between them. Maybe not quite so extreme for the simpler, stripped-back stories, and maybe not quite so arc-driven for the Monk trilogy. That kind of middle ground, if they'd been able to find a middle ground between them, I think, a balance, then that might have worked better. But instead for me, like I say, it felt like we'd gone back to square one, like it was the start of the series all over again. I mean, for example, in the East of Light, Bill had only just discovered the TARDIS translation circuit. Now while that was good in a way, because it showed how a companion could develop and progress over a wider range of episodes across the whole series, as opposed to just doing that in the first few and then going off with the Doctor and becoming some kind of pro after that. In my opinion, it felt like one of those things that belonged in the first half of the series. Maybe if the East of Light as an episode had gone in the first half of the series, that might have worked slightly better. But despite any gripes in the middle of the series, I think it ended on a very impressive note in the form of that fantastic two-part finale. Furthermore, as I'd previously hoped, Moffat has successfully found a way to round off Series 10 as a standalone entity that is satisfying enough for casual viewers, but also, simultaneously, it does lead into the Christmas special. It does have that sense of a loose three-parter, with the Series 10 finale and Christmas special being connected by the theme of regeneration, by the 12th Doctor's final stand, final battle, and therefore it works on those two levels, I think, which was very important to me, because I was kind of concerned, or maybe not concerned, but curious as to how they achieved that. And from what we've seen so far, 2 out of 3 parts of this loose three-parter, I think Moffat has done a superb job at making it work on those two levels, for those two audiences. And so, for the episode ranking, in 12th place I've put The Lie of the Land, a fairly disappointing conclusion to the Monk trilogy, I think. In 11th place it's The Eaters of Light, a good solid contribution from Rona Munro, her second Doctor Who outing, but overall a bit underwhelming, I think. In 10th place, Knock Knock, again pretty underwhelming in the grand scheme of things. It wasn't a standout, groundbreaking episode, but a nice enough first outing for Mike Bartlett, I think. In 9th place, Smile, some nice 60s vibes, a nice futuristic city, very impressive location work. The only thing I would say is the ending was a bit rushed and the supporting characters weren't the best we've ever had, and perhaps it could have worked better as a two-parter or an extended story, just to provide a bit more to that ending. But other than that, it was a pretty good story, actually. In 8th place, Empress of Mars. Again, quite a solid story, but nothing too groundbreaking. I mean, it was nice enough, and probably the strongest Mike Gatiss episode we've ever had, which is a plus, but nothing too standout in my opinion. In 7th place, The Pyramid at the End of the World. A nice enough story, a nice enough middle part for the Monk trilogy. It doesn't do too much for you as a standalone episode, but has some nice moments, nice themes about the end of the world, how it's already begun somewhere in the world, and subversion of expectations. You think it's going to be the monks, the armies, the prime ministers that are pressing the buttons, the nuclear weapons, but in actual fact it all boils down to something a lot more intimate, personal, and remote, really. In 6th place, Thin Ice, another very nice story from Sarah Dollard. I mean, nothing too special, but it was very solid, I think. Very well written, very well paced as well, had that kind of classic feel, and the historical side of it, the accuracy, the research, was very well done. Ranked 5th is The Pilot, not Stephen Moffat's strongest script by any means, but a nice, stripped-back, simple way to introduce any new viewers to Doctor Who. I love how this story is told from Bill's perspective right from the word go, and it's probably one of the best, most engaging companion opening stories in Doctor Who's history. In 4th place, Oxygen, one of the most atmospheric Doctor Who stories we've had in years. A superb third story from Jamie Mathieson, really, really well done. I loved how it made space seem like a very terrifying concept again, because it's not been like that in Doctor Who very much in the past, and I think the Doctor Going Blind really hit home that space is dangerous, it's not cosy, and the risks of going out in space, either in real life or in the Doctor Who universe. In 3rd place, I've put Extremis. A very nice story from Stephen Moffat, perhaps the equivalent of Listen in Series 8, his little chamber piece in this series. I know some fans were a bit annoyed that it was a bit repetitive, kind of a culmination of all of the best bits of Stephen Moffat stories that we've had in the past, but this wasn't something I minded too much myself. I thought the twist of the simulation was very clever. The whole mystery of the Veritas was just gripping throughout, and a very entertaining watch, very, very satisfying and fulfilling by the end. And a great first instalment to the Monk trilogy, really building up the tension and the hype. It's just unfortunate, I think, that the rest of the Monk trilogy didn't quite live up to that expectation. In 2nd place, I've put The Doctor Falls, one of the best closing instalments for a series that we've had in years. It really did sum up the whole of Series 10, but also the whole of the Capaldi era, bringing together all sorts of themes and characters that have been present throughout all 3 series, and providing character ends for, well, all of them really, the 12th Doctor, Missy, Bill, Nardole, and also, as I've said, successfully leading into the Christmas special. It's that kind of final stand, final battle for the 12th Doctor, before the 12th Doctor's regeneration, And I just think it's great that we've got the best of both worlds, really. He does get to have a final stand, a final battle, but also a proper swan song, a more light-hearted, perhaps more optimistic finale at Christmas as well. And in first place is the phenomenal World Enough and Time. Which other episode would it be, realistically? It was just gripping from start to end. The whole stuff with the Cybermen, the conversion process for Bill, Razor eventually revealing himself as the Johnson Master. It really did have it all, this story. A seriously strong penultimate instalment for a series, and it certainly set up the finale, but also the 12th Doctor's regeneration story very, very nicely. And so there we have it, my official Series 10 episode ranking. I've deliberately not given scores out of 10 for them in my individual reviews. I've kind of been waiting for this point when I can think, retrospectively, in hindsight, how I would rank them with regards to each other and how I would compare them, what I would say about them. So please comment your rankings below, and also your thoughts on Series 10, on all the elements that I've discussed, the story arc, the characters, the companion, the TARDIS team, anything that I've not discussed as well. I'd really love to hear what you thought of Series 10. If you agreed with me, if you disagreed with me, just whatever the case, put it in the comments below, and I will read them and get back to you and debate with you, and we can have some nice discussions about Series 10 of Doctor Who. Apart from that, just the usual stuff. Please like the video, subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you very soon for some more brand new Doctor Who content. Goodbye for now, guys.